ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਈਸ਼ਵਰ ਦੀ ਸਹੁੰ ਚੁੱਕਦਾ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਕਾਨੂੰਨ ਦੁਆਰਾ ਸਥਾਪਿਤ ਭਾਰਤ ਦੇ ਸੰਵਿਧਾਨ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਤੀ ਸੱਚੀ ਸ਼ਰਧਾ ਤੇ ਨਿਸ਼ਠਾ ਰੱਖਾਂਗਾ।
Well, Bhagwant Mann has taken the oath as the Chief Minister of Punjab and he's already got down to work. And the question we are asking this week on One Take is that who's the man behind Bhagwant Mann, or is he going to be a man of his own? I'm Pallavi Ghosh. Well, the feeling was that Bhagwant Mann was chosen after much thoughts and consideration and also a reluctance. Remember the last time round when the AAP'S party could not win in Punjab, one of the reasons which was pinned down was the fact that they had not announced a chief minister's face. That mistake was not repeated by Arvind Kejriwal this time round, and despite several names during the rounds, it was zeroed in on Bhagwant Mann, someone who's been a member of parliament from Sangrur, extremely popular or comedian, and also who indulges in grassroots brand of politics. His one-liners, his connection with the crowd, these were the factors which certainly went in his favour. The moment his name was announced, his political opponents, like in the Congress party, the Akalis, all of him rubbished off as just a joke. But the last laugh, I would say, is on Bhagwant Mann. But now comes to stage two. Now, if you look at political parties like, say, a Congress party or personality-driven parties like the Congress, the Trinamool Congress, or even the Aam Aadmi Party, there's always this speculation and doubt, I would say, and a belief and a perception which comes up is that no matter who becomes a chief minister from their political party, the party president reigns supreme. Now, if you look at the Congress party specifically, it's always felt that the remote control is in the hands of Sonia Gandhi. Things started changing when you had someone like an Ashok Gehlot or a Captain Amrinder Singh who were people with their own mind. And while Gehlot sounds a little bit more malleable and makes the right noises, everyone within the Congress party knows you cannot tickle him, because that would be a dangerous sign. Now, let's just focus on Punjab and come back to this question on who's the man behind Mann, he himself, or is it going to be Arvind Kejriwal? See, in Punjab, and like in most other states to be fair, but in Punjab specifically, that whole concept of a gabru, of a man who is macho, that becomes a very, very important factor. The power of Captain Amrinder Singh came from the fact that while he gave his respect to the Gandhis, he had a mind of his own. He would not listen, or at least he sent out his perception, I'm not going to buckle under pressure from them. In fact, that was one of the reasons which led to his undoing or the exit of Captain Amrinder Singh. New Delhi wanted a remote in his hands. They could not accept the fact that here was a man who was a true blue-blooded Sardar, and he did not want to listen to the diktat coming in from the Gandhis. In Punjab, the Punjabis would want a chief minister who has a mind of his own. You know, when I would travel through Punjab during elections, not many would be convinced with me when I would say that don't you think the Dalit credentials of Charanjit Singh Channi can actually give that cutting edge to the Congress party. They said no, we feel he's going to be subservient. We feel he's not going to stand up. In fact, in stark contrast, many, while, you know, at the Congress center, leadership, many of us observers would say that Navjot Singh Sidhu is damaging his party. Well, there are reasons why the Congress lost, which we've already analysed. One of them could be the public statements of Sidhu in the mind of the voters, but by and large, there are a large number of voters who would actually tell me that at least Navjot Singh Sidhu speaks his mind. He stands up for himself. This is going to be the expectation on Bhagwant Mann. You know, when we saw those pictures of his name being announced, he hugs Arvind Kejriwal, that's fair enough. After all, he's a party president, he hugs him, he pays his respect to him and also owes his gratitude to him. Also, when he took his oath, we had Arvind Kejriwal very there. Recently, we also had a statement from Arvind Kejriwal where he addressed to video conference the party MLAs, telling that if you have any problem, come to me. Now, this is a double-edged sword. Of course, he's speaking as a party president. He wants to keep his doors open and also wants to have the direct connect with the MLAs. But the other important thing is, what does it do to Mann? Will it actually trigger off a situation which started happening in many of the Congress ruled states where the MLAs, every time they were upset with the chief minister, would go rushing to the centre? Because that could be the beginning of the end. Now, Arvind Kejriwal is known as a very shrewd politician. He understands the nuances. He also observes the other political parties and he knows that those are the mistakes I should not be repeating. This is one mistake if he does indeed make, where the MLAs are encouraged to rush to Delhi every time they are upset with Bhagwant Mann, is actually could be the undoing of the newly born AAP government in Punjab. The second thing is, if you compare the chief ministership of Arvind Kejriwal and Bhagwant Mann, Arvind Kejriwal is not seen as a complete chief minister because Delhi is, after all, a half state. Punjab is a full state. The victory has been stupendous, and therefore many would say, actually, technically speaking, Bhagwant Mann is much stronger than Arvind Kejriwal, and therefore why should he listen to to Arvind Kejriwal? That's not the way any political party which is driven by personality is run, and certainly not the Aam Aadmi Party. And therefore, there's always this danger that Mann would have to walk that tightrope walk, knowing that on one hand, he has to adhere to what the Punjabis demand from the Chief Minister as someone who stands up to a central leadership, who actually speaks and does his own, and whatever decisions has been taken by him should not be seen as a decision which has been dictated by the centre. Now, his first promise, of course, was that of government jobs. Fair enough, because that was a part of manifesto, something which was announced by Arvind Kejriwal himself and also by Bhagwant Mann, and that is something which is a huge concern in Punjab of lack of jobs. But here on his challenge begins. How often will he be seen rushing to Delhi, having that meeting with Arvind Kejriwal, or engaged in phone calls with him, or even with Manish Sisodia, sitting in Chandigarh and taking orders from there? That could be his undoing, because remember, he's after all a leader from Punjab. He's been an MP from there, he's an MLA from there, and of course he's a chief minister. He has a political future in the state, and therefore if he wants to stick on to Punjab, he has to kind of project himself as a man who stands up for himself. This may not be acceptable to someone like an Arvind Kejriwal, who's also believes in that same politics which in a sense the Gandhis believe, that we are the chief, the buck stops with us, and therefore we are going to take all the decisions and calls. Also, the Aam Aadmi Party is not limiting itself only to Punjab. It's now got its eyes set on other states like Gujarat and of course Haryana, Karnataka, whenever the elections take place. Over there also, it will be very important for Arvind Kejriwal to have that grip over his party. You loosen that grip, you loosen that control over your chief minister, you loosen your chances of becoming a top-notch political leader. Let's also not forget, we are heading towards 2024, which is still a couple of years down. But in politics, every day matters. 24 hours is really a long time. If he wants to project himself as a contender to Narendra Modi, and if AAP wants to pitch itself as the front face and the most powerful face of the opposition front, then Arvind Kejriwal will certainly have to look powerful. And how does he do that? He has a control over his party, over his MLAs, over his MPs, and of course over his chief ministers. But that's where the problem arises as far as Arvind Kejriwal goes. It's a tightrope walk. As I said, on one hand, in a personality-driven party like AAP, he has to be in control, because the bigger picture for him is 2024. Not just Punjab, not just Gujarat or Haryana or Karnataka. But for the man, Bhagwant Mann, it's important to be his own man, because his future lies in Punjab. He's not looking beyond Punjab. He cannot be seen as a puppet chief minister. You know, the powers of, say, an Akalis, the power of, say, Captain Amrinder Singh actually came from the fact that they were seen as someone who occasionally stood up to the leadership, who had a mind of their own. You know, if you look at, say, Gyani Zail Singh, Bhuta Singh, they were often ridiculed for not being a true Sardar, because it was believed that they always were subservient to the Gandhis, and that was the undoing when we look at the pages of history. A mistake which perhaps Bhagwant Mann may not want to make. But will that give rise to friction? Well, it's early days yet. Knowing a party like Aam Aadmi Party, they would like to cover up. But you know, personality-driven parties also have a way of getting rid of netas, getting rid of their leaders, finding an alternative space for them. Is that a mistake which Arvind Kejriwal would make? Frankly speaking, in Aam Aadmi Party, there is no one else in Punjab who comes close to Mann. But who knows in the future, because politicians and political leaders are known to start building up a second line of leadership as an alternative to keep that, guessing game going, to the carrot and stick or divide and rule policy, something which the Gandhis learned at one point of time but have completely forgotten. What I think the last thing Arvind Kejriwal would want is a regional satrap in Bhagwant Mann. But Mann also knows that his Mann remains in Punjab by being the man on the job. Do give in your reactions on the social media timeline. I'm already getting a lot of reactions, but please keep them coming. Thank you so much for watching.